Paul Harris, welcome to Surfing Stuff. Absolutely fantastic to have you on here today. I've been looking forward to this, and I know you have too. Wow. Just a bit of, to my listeners here, Paul Harris is, he was one of the main actors at Southbroom Beach in the 1980s, a natural footer. And I only arrived after the fact, but the stories and the legends I heard of Paul Harris have stuck with me all these years. And yeah, we got Paul on here today. So Paul, welcome to Surfing Stuff. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Hey, Karl, thanks, man.
Yeah, let's rock, man. Let's go for it.
Hey, Karl, how's it going?
Lekker, man.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be here. I've been looking forward to this. It's always fun to talk about years way past, especially Southbroom, which is a long way from me at the moment, being over in New Zealand. So, yeah,
okay,
let's do it.
So you say you're in New Zealand, Paul. Are you up? You're in the north of the South Island?
Yeah, the far north, Northland. So about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Auckland.
Okay, okay.
Up on the east coast.
Okay, and good surf around there where you are, Paul?
Sorry?
Good surf where you are?
Yes, there is. There is. Definitely not what we had at the Broom, but yeah, I mean, it has its good days, and you know, you've got to travel and you've got to look at the conditions and you've got to look at the swells. But I certainly don't surf as much as I would like and as much as I used to. But there's gems, you know, there's gems in certain places.
Sure.
I suppose just like anywhere. Yeah, no, there is. There is.
No, one time. Listen, Paul, I got a whole list of things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I guess the best place to start at number one. Your earliest memory of surfing Southbroom. Let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. Your earliest memory, how old were you? And yeah, just talk us through it.
Yeah, I think it must have been around 84, maybe 85. I got my first board December 83, and I know for the first year I didn't go near the Broom. I was just too scared. It was a place for the big boys, so I surfed at Ramsgate for the first year. I stuck to the shore break, and I can't really remember that, you know, the day or the time, but I remember I just felt ready for Southbroom. And I think some of my earliest memories were walking down from my place in Ramsgate and leaving my bag on the beach. I had one of those little surfing style barrel bags.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I'd leave it on the beach and then just hop in the water. And I know those are the first memories because what I used to do after that was walk across and then sit on the grass terraces.
Okay.
So those early days, I'd walk down with my brother and we'd leave our bags on the beach. There's one day in particular that I remember. You know, you just have those days, those random days that are like photographs in your head. You just remember them.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Easter weekend. It was very unusual Southbroom conditions. It was pretty small, super glassy, kind of drizzly and misty, which is not a normal day on the East Coast. And I remember it was just perfect for me. You know, it was about 2 foot, these little peelers, and I was just having so much fun. And I think I was on my second board, which was a Town and Country twin fin. So that would have been around 84, 85.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we did that for a couple of years until we sort of moved over onto the grass terraces.
Okay.
Once I started going down with the Coates brothers.
Okay.
And meeting them on the other side and kind of staking our claim on the grass terraces.
Yes.
So yeah, that would have been about 84, I reckon.
Okay. And Paul, and at the time, you've just mentioned the Coates brothers, Shane and the late Rory.
Yeah.
That yes, man. If I remember, Man, I remember Rory. I remember Shane, Nevin, and Dallin.
Yeah.
A whole truckload of guys. Do you want to do some name dropping? Who are the Oaks that were around at that early time of you surfing Southbroom? Which and later on they became known as the Manduv boys. Yeah, who was around? Drop some names for us, Paul.
Yeah, that would have been me and Shane and Rory, and then there was Nevin and Dallin Davidson, who were my neighbours. And there was Kev Cox, there was Nick and Craig Ferguson. That would have been probably 86, 87. I remember the Finnekerk brothers started appearing, but that was probably a few years later, Sean and Brett.
Yes, I remember them, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but those early days, it was mostly me, Shane, Rory, Nevin and Dallin, and Kev Cox and Nick Ferguson. Those early days. The Super Grom days,
Okay.
Before we started lifesaving,
Okay.
which I think we did once we were about 16. Louis offered us a job as lifesavers out from 16, 17, so before then. And that was just every weekend, It's just such a solid time. It's such a, I was thinking about it the other day, it's such a solid, consistent, healthy thing to do as a kid. And those are my memories from then, There was so uncomplicated. You wake up in the morning, I'd normally meet Dal or Nevin up on the road between our house. We'd walk down, or we'd skate down the road just above where your house was.
Yeah. What was that? That was Lynn Road, eh?
Yeah, as it starts sloping down.
Yes, yeah.
You look off to the left and you get that awesome view of the Broom.
Oh, man.
And straight down to the beach for the whole day.
Yes.
Yeah, golden memories.
I really, you mentioned now just up where your folks were, and over the road you had Devin and Nevin and Dallin. You had their Pawsey,
yeah.
And they had a younger sister, Taryn. She was my age, and
that's right.
Yes, man. I remember they had like their house was like a palace, man. I never forget that. And that road going down, and you had Ant Brods on the corner, right down at the bottom. Our house was over the road from him, and yes, like when you brought that up, my mind shifted there quickly, and it's that view has been imprinted. It hangs in the gallery of my mind. Every now and again, the picture pops up. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, jeez, like bro. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great view.
Yeah,
and then there was also. A major feature back then was Ski Boat Bay.
I want to talk to you about that just now. Yeah.
Yeah, we surfed there heaps. That was often the place we used to go after school. It was easy just to walk down from our place. Ski Boat Bay shore break. It was just surfing, body surfing, boogie boarding, just whatever. It was just a really good, consistent place to get into the water. And we had a few really good sessions on the outside, but it was, from my memory, it was mostly the inside, that shore break down by the rocks there.
Yes.
It was a place where I remember getting those first totally wowy views of being in the barrel.
Okay.
Big dumping shore break, and it was like a mini Waimea shore break for us, and screaming down on bodyboards or body surfing and just getting these massive blue lips that would fly over us. Yes. Such good fun. As a kid, it was just hooting and, coming up with sand in your baggies or, lots of memories. Lots of memories.
And listen, Paul, I want to just quickly ask you. You mentioned earlier on the boards, your first boards. So you kind of started in the twin fin era, or hang on.
Yeah.
The thrusters came about in 81-ish, somewhere around there, if I recall. Maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah.
So you were a twinny boy in the beginning.
Yeah, my first board, that's a really lovely, clear memory. Going to Surf and Style. It was a Christmas present for me and my brother. And I went to Surf and Style with my parents and my grandparents, actually. And it was the shop. Shelley's shop used to be a couple doors up from where it was for many years. And you walked in and there was a little counter on your left and there were some stairs that go up the right and all the way around the top. And there were boards on each step, all the way up and then all the way around the top. So it was like a gallery of surfboards. And I remember going in and my parents said to Shelley that we're looking for 2 surfboards. And I got a hotline, a twin fin hotline, and my brother got it was a Lyle Coney country rhythm, twin fin swallowtail.
Yes, bro.
And I never forget because we chose our boards and then we went back down to the counter and then Shelley said, okay, you got to get a leash and you got to get some wax. And my grandmother was standing next to me and Shelley said, no, you got to get yourself some sex wax. And I remember the look on my grandmother's face. It's like, what is this? What sport are you getting into here? You know?
Oh man, and all those smells, all those zogs, my brew. I loved the
the coconut and the strawberry and so I started out on that hotline. I actually don't know much about hotline surfboards or where they even came from, or where they were being made. I had that board for probably not even a year, and then I got a Town and Country twin fin CHP, which I think I can't remember what that stood for.
California Hawaiian Productions.
Oh, does it? Yeah.
And the only reason why I know that
was a great board.
The only reason why I know that, if I've got that right, was Peter Daniels shaped under that label for a while, and I had 1 or 2 of those in my time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great board, actually. I'd love to still have that.
Yes, bro.
And then after that board was when I got my first thruster.
Okay.
Because Lyle Coney was shaping under Simon Anderson's logo.
Okay.
And that was my first custom board, 360 rand, full 80s new wave, fading colors,
wow,
little dots and triangles. And me and my brother sat in our room and we sketched out these designs that we wanted on our board. And we just threw everything at it. Every 80s cliche went on those boards,
Wow. Man.
There were stripes and colors and fading lines, and it was pretty busy.
Jeez,
but that was an amazing little board, and I had that for quite a few years, and I think that was probably the best board I had for those early years, as far as me progressing and just learning the basics, learning how to bottom turn, learning how to come off the top.
Okay.
And really, I remember feeling the difference between the twin fins and the thruster even back then.
Okay.
Just I suppose the reason that makes them so popular still to this day, they've just got that drive. They just feel solid. And I remember back then feeling that, like, ooh, this little thing's different to the big twinnies that I had.
Okay. So Paul,
which were fun, but yeah.
So Paul, in that time, we're speaking country rhythm surfboards now. If I've, I kind of came around after all of that. So I remember meeting Darren Coney. He was about a year ahead of me at school, if I recall. So I knew Darren. I didn't know his older brother. I knew Shelley from South Shore Surf Club days. But Lyle Coney, he seemed to be he was the big dog on the block when it came to surfboards. If I've puzzled the puzzle pieces correctly together, Lyle had a big thing going there at one stage.
Yeah. As far as I remember, pretty much everyone rode. The guys further north rode wedge.
Okay.
There was a bunch of guys who rode safari, Spider Murphy, but in Margate, most of the guys were on country rhythm, and then through kind of through the late 80s, he had a bunch of other shapers that came down. Peter Lawson started shaping in the factory. Andrew Carter started shaping in the factory.
Okay.
So there was a lot of variety there. For a few years, I had Lyle's boards, and then I had an Andrew Carter board, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
What was Peter Lawson? Hooded Villain. His boards were pretty popular for a few years.
He's still going, eh? He's still shaping and doing his thing, eh?
Really?
Yeah. The Hooded, yeah.
It was a big factory, I remember going in as a grom, and it was always a really exciting place to go. Just the smell of the resin, and then invariably you'd find Lyle with his big thick rimmed glasses and a face mask on, covered in dust. And he was a pretty chill dude. He'd come out, and he knew us because we were mates with his son Ryan.
Okay. Okay.
And I think Ryan was actually, I was just thinking back to, I don't really remember the real starting days of surfing as far as why I even started, but I think Ryan was one of the reasons. He was the only kid in primary school who even surfed, and that would have been standard 4. And I think he said to a few of us guys, "Come on, guys, you've got to start surfing."
Okay.
Because he used to surf at the same mics with all the older guys.
Okay.
And I think that's what started it all.
So, and Paul, did you go to Margate Primary School, Mugabumwe? Did you go there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That was. That was where it all sort of started. And I remember those are my earliest memories of talking surf on a Monday. We'd come in, and Ryan was always really easy to rile up. You'd come in and we'd go, me and Shane would go, "Gee, Southbroom was so good. I'm sure it was better than Saints this weekend," and would drive Ryan nuts. He says, "There's no way it's as good as St. Mike's." Like, yeah, but it's kind of a weak wave and it's a bit shit, and it would drive him nuts. And then we'd come in. The best thing we would come and do, and we'd go, I'm thinking of selling my country rhythm and buying a spider, and it would drive him nuts.
Oh,
he's no better shaper than my dad. Oh man.
Oh no! Yes, like really. Wow. Yeah. Hey, he's just popped into my mind. You're speaking about Ryan Coney. I don't know why. Andrew Banks has just come to mind. Did you? Was Banksy around in the early days?
I can't remember when he moved to the coast. I think he was about standard 7 or something.
Okay. Okay.
So I was a year older than him. But I clearly remember when he arrived, because I think I was already a member of South Shore Surf Club. And he arrived, and I remember, I think Ant Bodge talked to him about him, saying there was this good surfer who'd arrived from East London. And once he started surfing South Shore, he just totally blitzed all of us. We sort of wanted to send him home again, really.
Oh, Banksy, yes.
But I didn't surf with him much besides competing, because he surfed up at St. Mike's.
Okay.
And in those early days, none of us had cars, so we didn't really, we didn't go anywhere. We used to go to Trafalgar a little bit.
Okay.
But, my memories of Andrew were South Shore.
Okay.
But I was thinking about him earlier when you'd asked me some of those questions, and, it's always good having those good surfers around to surf with them, because I really loved Andrew's style, and he did the basics so well. He had such a good bottom turn.
Oh,
he had such a good off the top. Mm. He had such a good roundhouse cutback. In that sort of a style that I really loved, no fluff, It was just good, solid surfing, and it was always so good to watch him.
No, I agree, 100%.
He was a long way ahead of most of us on the South Coast. Yeah.
This is, talented oak lad. Banksy. Jeez, I haven't spoken to Banks for a while, but I actually asked him a few months ago if he wanted to come on the podcast, and he said he would. So I need to get cracking on that and get Banksy on here.
It'll be interesting.
Paul, moving on a bit here. Hey, your biggest day at the Broom. Now we both know Southbroom can't really hold a big swell. You got the reef that breaks on the outside. Then then you got round the corner. You got Louis Bay, etc. But what was the biggest day that you ever had at the Broom? That was managed. I'm not talking like wild and out of control. I'm talking. What's the biggest day that you've had there? That was the biggest surfable day. Did anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, there was definitely one day that came to mind. Mostly because of a wave that landed right in front of me, and just that feeling or that realization, that split second. What have you got yourself into here? But I remember jumping off further round in the normal jump off spot. That normal flat rock that we used to jump off.
Yeah.
And then probably another 15 meters round from that, there were those huge big boulders.
Yeah.
And we walked down on the other side of that and jumped off in a place we'd never jumped off before, and then paddled out, heading sort of towards where the reef is out the back.
Okay.
And this particular day, it was just, like you said, Southbroom doesn't handle masses, but it was good conditions. It was glassy, and it was kind of peaky, which I think helped it. So it was just these huge, big peaks. It wasn't closing out, and I think it was the first time I'd experienced some nice big drops.
Okay.
That you could actually make. I remember it at least sort of 3-4 times overhead.
Wow.
Not taking many waves, but having a few, and definitely getting a few on the head. I still laughed with Mike House, a friend of mine, and we were paddling out together, and this wave landed in front of us. And we had enough time to look at each other and look back out to sea with that look of, "Bro, this might be the last time we see each other," kind of thing. And this wave landed about 5 meters in front of us, and it was just mayhem. Those moments when you're not quite sure whether to laugh or cry.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would have been probably 89, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I reckon. But not many monster days, like you said, Yeah.
Okay. And then you're talking about big days, and we're talking about some personalities here. Hey, I've got to speak to you for a couple of minutes about Louis Volmerans. Louis.
Yeah, Louis.
When I got on the scene there in the early 1990s, that oak was already a bullet. Now, and he's still cooking on gas. He's still out there, bro. How was he?
He is.
How was he in the 80s? Or he must have, was he? He's not a high performance surfer, but he was just consistent, always there, and he always made the paddles. And I know when it got really big, we'd go off to St. Michael's in my time of surfing that coastline. And goodness, I've seen that man out in some big stuff, bro. Big stuff. How was Louis in the early days?
Yeah, Louis he's the epitome of consistency, isn't he? He would always do that morning surf check. Yeah, he was there when I started in the late 80s. And he sort of had this ageless vibe about him, I don't really remember him changing much. I don't remember him surfing any different. He always rode slightly bigger boards. And he just had that presence. He was like the Papa Bear of Southbroom, really. He was never overly fizzing. And he just sat out the back and waited for the bombs.
And was he still doing those exercises?
He was the fatherly presence, I think, for us out there. And one thing I remember was he was pretty chill. But if you ever dropped in on Louis, which we did every now and then just for a bit of fun, he would do this big bottom turn, and he wouldn't say anything. He would do this big bottom turn. He'd come up behind you, and he'd just roar like a bear, and you got off the way pretty quick. And he wouldn't say anything afterwards. He would just come right up behind you like, "Rah!" Like, oh my gosh, Louis! And he would just, you'd give you a bit of a scowl, and then you'd know, don't drop in for another 6 months.
Yeah, this is our Louis.
But he was also always keen to kind of hang out and just talk on the, on the grass banks. One good memory I've got of Louis was, once we got a little older, once we sort of 17, 18, 19, there'd be a few mornings where we'd come down and we'd been out the night before, and Louis started noticing a change in us. We'd been out partying, and Louis' favourite saying was, "Brew, you missed it this morning."
Yeah.
Even if we got there at 7 instead of 6:30, he'd be like, "Oh, Brew, you guys missed it this morning." And that was just Louis' classic, And I remember when I left South Africa in '94, and I was away for a couple of years before I came back. And when I came back, I had all my photographs from Indo, and I walked into Ocean Sport.
Okay.
And I think you guys had a really good winter the year before, and I walked into Louis' shop, and he looked at me and he went, "Oh, bro, you've missed it." And I said, "No, Louis." And I put all my photos on the counter. I said, "Louis, you've missed it." And I showed him all these pictures of Nias and the barrels and stuff, and he looked down and he went, "Geez, I think you might be right."
Yes. Wow, man.
It was classic Louis.
Yeah. Hey, when you spoke of Indo there, do you ever remember surfing with Craig McCann, and Gavin Craig, the McCann brothers?
Yes, definitely. That was a part of the real early years. I think probably the 86, 87. I had a little stint of hanging out at Uvonga.
Okay.
Not sure why I ended up going over there. But yeah, hanging out with the McCanns and Slade and Clint Mansfield.
Okay.
And spending a few summers over there. My parents would drop me and my brother at the beach, and we'd go and surf Uvonga. I remember that was the era. I remember, I think it was Craig was surfing quads. The first time I ever saw a quad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, good surfers. Craig was. Yeah, I remember his style, smooth. Yeah, good memories.
Yes. Okay, so now I've got to ask the question, Paul. In your time of hanging around the Broom, Ski Boat Bay, the odd St. Mark's, Trafalgar, in your time, who to you was the standout? I know you mentioned Andrew Banks earlier, but who was like when the Oak rocked up and paddled out? It was like, geez, like Bruce, so and so's here. Who was that in your time, Paul? Goofy foot or natural, doesn't matter. Who was the O?
Yeah, there was a guy, and I've been trying to remember his name. This was right in the early. I think he used to work for the Shark Sport, and someone said that he grew up and used to compete with Potts in Durban. I don't know what his name was. He was a stocky guy, curly hair, really quiet-spoken, and he used to always rock up with a twin fin. And this was even once thrusters were well established, and he absolutely ripped. And I don't know who he was, and he'd sort of turn up every 6 months. I've got a feeling he worked for Shark Sport down in Trafalgar. I never saw him after about the early 90s.
Okay.
As far as local, that guy really, he was amazing. He was really, really amazing.
Jeez, I wonder who that could be. Eh? I'll have to get hold of Calvin Were and ask him. You know, Calvin works at the Shark Sport still, and I mean, maybe he knows. Going way back. Yeah,
I remember Kevin Cox knew him, and I just knew or I'd heard that he competed and actually regularly used to take out pots. I think he was at school with Martin Potter.
Wow. Okay.
And then just, at Southbroom we used to get, we'd get a lot of the guys from Durban coming down on the weekend.
Sure.
I often didn't know who they were. I recognised them from Zigzag.
Okay.
And there was the odd day where I remember having a session with Craig Sims. I had a session with Pierre Tosti. But who I always was really impressed with was Gordon Turnbull.
Okay.
Just so really innovative, always did the unexpected, so radical. Not sure what happened to him. I saw a bit of him in those late 80s, early 90s, that era. There was one day when Sean Thompson arrived at Southbroom. I clearly remember that.
Okay.
He came down with his wife and a few friends and sat on the terraces. To be honest, I can't remember if he surfed, but I remember him sitting there. And there was one guy I remember who came down. It was a strange sort of coincidence. I used to subscribe to Surfing magazine in the 80s. And there was a young American pro, I think his name was George Holtz. His surname was definitely Holtz, but I can't remember his first name exactly. And I'd never heard of him before.
Goodness, I've
but
never
it was
heard
crazy
of him.
because I'd got the, Hulse.
Okay.
And I remember getting the recent Surfing magazine. I got it that night, and he was on the cover of Surfing magazine. And I remember looking at the mag going, oh, who's this guy? The very next day, I went down to Southbroom, and he was surfing at Southbroom. It was like this sort of, almost like a ghost appearance.
Wow.
And it was that era and that time when, I can't remember the exact layout of the comps, but there was a time when the Gunston would be on, and then after the Gunston, all the pros would drive down to J Bay.
Yeah.
And that would sort of be the time when they would come through. Not many of them would stop, because they would all just go straight through the Transkei.
Sure.
But this dude obviously just ventured south, and he ended up at Southbroom. And totally, it was a good big day. And I remember even people who didn't surf were standing up on the grass terraces going, geez, who's that guy?
No way.
Just amazing to see a surfer of that caliber,
Gee, wow.
But
you brought up Gordon Turnbull. The last time I saw Gordon Turnbull was in London, and that would have been 2001. I was living in Willesden Green at this house that never closed. The doors were always open, and it was a bunch of the Toti boys living there.
Okay.
Goodness me. And I remember I had an Australian friend. I don't know how he knew these guys, but he did. And I needed a place to kip for a while. I was kind of couch surfing at that time. And I ended up at Willesden Green at their house. There was Gordon Turnbull and another guy called Snowy. I can't remember all the characters, but my goodness gracious, Paul, it was just a non-stop rock and roll. And I remember Gordon Turnbull was leading the pack there, bro. And they had a pool table in there. And, Gordon was like, yes, bro. It was the first. I actually didn't really know who he was. And he got introduced to me. Well, I got introduced to him. I said, Karl, this is Gordon Turnbull. And I never knew. I'd heard of his name. But I never knew what he had done in South African surfing and how respected he was. But my goodness, yes, that house was wild, bro. That was the last time I actually saw Gordon. First and only time.
Okay.
I lived there for about 3 weeks to a month, and then I just tuned noit, bro. I got a vibe from you, bro. Gordon.
It's often those guys who burn bright and sort of burn short. those kind of surfers are often the real flamboyant, because that's how he was, as far as I can tell, But, he's also come to mind, Nick Williams.
Okay, I've heard a lot about Nick. No, I've never met Nick.
Nick Williams. He was also, I think he was also shaping at the Country Rhythm Factory. But there was a period in the late 80s, early 90s when he was on the South Coast, and he was impressive to watch. I remember those northeast days when we would go down to Lucian.
Okay.
And most of us would be, kind of tucked in behind the rocks there on that sort of mid-break right-hander.
Yeah.
And Nick would be outside, 6-foot monster barrels, just pulling into big closeouts, and I remember his vibe of, just being a bit of a nutter, and everyone would sit and watch him do that, but no one else would go out there. We'd all be surfing the short break or the mid break, but I remember Nick's surfing was really spontaneous and loose, really loose. You just never knew what to expect from him.
Wow.
And just looking back, I think that's those are the kind of surfers that I enjoyed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paul, you spoke about Indo earlier.
Yeah.
I don't want to harp on the whole Indo thing and the whole, surfing tropical waves. But in your time, when you kind of grew, did you do military service, by the way?
No, I just dodged that because I finished studying the end of 93, and that's when that whole military thing changed.
Okay.
And then I left South Africa early 94.
Okay.
Um,
and where did surfing take you around the world? You mentioned Indo. Where else did you get to go and surf? And did you get to the North Shore at all? Where did you get to Europe? Where did you surf, Paul?
No, I didn't. I didn't actually I've never been to Hawaii. I grew up having a poster of the right-hander at Nias on my wall.
Oh.
That was like my mecca, I just remember staring at that poster for years thinking, I'm going to get there. Didn't really know where it was. So that was first sort of my mission. When I left home, I spent 6 months in the UK, and then was actually planning to head over to the States and go down through Mexico. But I'd met a few English guys who did the Indo-Oz route instead.
Okay.
So, and I remember meeting this guy who'd actually just come back from Nias. So I said, okay, I'm definitely going there. So I spent about 10 months in Oz, up and down the East Coast, just sort of doing the backpacker thing and skipping all those point breaks in Oz. And then was on a total mission. So I moved to Sydney, got a couple jobs in restaurants. I was always working in a restaurant, and then I was working in a crazy little takeaway place right next to the Bondi Hotel until about 4 a.m, serving all the drunks coming out wanting hot chips and sweet chili sauce, and saved my money and bought a 7-foot Pat Rawson and a 6'5", I think it was called a Phoenix. Spent 2 months at Nias, which was just amazing, really, really amazing.
And did you get it good, Paul? Did you get it like world class?
In that 2 months, I did a week trip out to the Hana Coast, Asu and Bawa, which had recently been made famous in the search videos with Tom Curran.
Okay. Wow.
And then I did a 2-week trip out to the Tello Islands, which now I think there's surf resorts out there. But that was amazing. The Tello Islands. I went out with this French guy to the Tello Islands, he always had a spear gun with him, so we called him Jacques Cousteau.
Okay.
And then there was these 2 Japanese guys who could hardly speak English, and we couldn't pronounce their names, so we called them Yoko and Ono.
Oh, okay.
And then this Australian guy and his girlfriend, and we took a bag of rice and a little gas cooker and they said that we could trade for fish from the locals. And we didn't see another surfer for 2 weeks out there. I think it's pretty busy out there now with boats and charters and surf resorts. But we just lived on this tiny little island on a shack on the one side, and there was a really nice left around the one side, and there's a right-hander, which I think is where the surf resort is now. But the rest of the 2 months was on Nias, which was just amazing. It was I think, looking back now, I'd say that was kind of the peak of my surfing experience,
Really? Oh, I can believe that. Jeez.
We had such good waves there. Total dream. And the last week in Nias was early September, and a lot of the guys had left because there were some good surfers there. And, I'd gotten used to the waves, and we had sort of 6 to 8 foot for about a week.
No
and
ways.
It was just, I can still remember some of those barrels. It was just such good surfing memories, really good.
Gee whiz.
And we had some good surfers there to watch as well. There was a boat of Hawaiians who arrived. Johnny Boy Gomez. Who's the guy with the big fro?
Buttons?
Yeah, Buttons. There was a bunch of that sort of era surfers who turned up, and that was amazing to watch them. Really amazing.
Sure. Wow, no way.
And pretty interesting to be in the water with Johnny Boy Gomez. What a character. Honestly, this dude turned up, and there would have been about 25, 30 surfers in the water, and Johnny Boy paddles out, and he goes, "All right, boys, Big Daddy's here, move over." And we just thought, who the hell is this guy? And then everyone saw who he was, and were like, "All right, Big Daddy, you can get the waves you want."
No way. Unbelievable. Gee,
but yeah, no, the Indo was a definite peak experience, and so many good waves. Yeah, really, really amazing. And I'm glad I got to see it at that time.
Okay.
Mid-90s. I think Nias is very different now. With crowds and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, the closest I ever got to Nias was a month on Bali in the rainy season. My goodness. Yeah, we had some good waves. It was really good. We got the chronic Bali belly. I was on the bowl for about a week of that month. Hey, bro, jeez, bro. Yeah, it was a good trip. But going a little bit further north up to Sumatra, that way, I just I thought about it, but just never. Life happened. Yeah, we did that trip. Went back to London and just got just. London stuffed me up, you know what I mean? Then I went back to East Side, just blah blah blah. Yeah, yes,
yeah.
Hey, I want to take you back to back to Southbroom for a moment, Paul. Of the Manduv boys, that era, who else was there? We've mentioned a few names. There was the Deploy brothers, Bobby and Craig. Then there was old Steve Ralph and his brother. What was his name? Gordon.
Yep.
All good surfers. They were good surfers. Osborne, oh yes, Simon.
Bruno Hansen.
That's right.
Yeah, there was a bunch of guys. A few of those guys sort of started coming over to Southbroom, from Margate and Uvongo and. That sort of 91, 92, 93 when we were all studying. Which was, we were there mostly only in the holiday times then, and then especially over Christmas, sort of December time. Dave Mitchell.
Yes, Dave, remember Dave,
yeah, there was just a big sort of troop of us, days on the beach were just a big old gang.
And Chumi Paul, there was another character. You remember about a year ago I wrote that song, If I Ever, Surf Southbroom Again. I remember you sent me some photographs. It was you or it was Steve Ralph. And there was a picture of you Oaks at Southbroom on the bank, and there was that midget. Maybe that's the incorrect word to use, but There was that.
Yeah.
He was all when I was a lady. He was always around, bro. Who's that, bro? Who was that?
I'm just trying to remember his name. Yeah, he was. He was such a cool dude.
He was. He was a classic, man. What I remember, yeah.
He came down from Joey's on holiday, and his family, they were there every holiday, and he was just one of those characters. He was so friendly, and he used to bodyboard. He'd jump off the rocks with his bodyboard, and he had one of those old school Moro boogies, which was probably about the same size as him.
Yeah, would be. Yeah. Shame, man.
I can't remember his name, but he definitely used to hang out with us. Yeah.
And there was another oak that rode a boogie board. His name was Rory. They used to call him Roach. He used to drive a Honda Ballard. Oh, I don't know. I'm just.
Oh, Roche.
Roche.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, no, he was a good mate of Nevin's, and he was definitely there a lot in the early days. Okay. Yeah, he was a keen. I think he lived in Ramsgate, so he was there a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And Paul, moving off Southbroom Beach, I want to talk a little bit about competitive surfing. I know it wasn't your big thing, but did you ever go down to J-Ban? I don't know if you were. I don't know how it worked, the qualifying rounds. But did you ever surf the Billabong Pro? I know Nevin Davidson did. If I remember correct.
Did. Yeah. No, I didn't. I pretty much stuck to South Shore.
Okay.
I did a few of the Southern Natal comps, but I was well and truly whipped at the Southern Natal comps and came back to Southern with my tail between my legs. I think one of my first heats in Southern Natal, I remember having Frankie Oberholzer in my heat and a couple other guys, and just thinking, geez, what am I doing here? It was a really good day at Umzombi. And, that's about as far afield as I went competitively. I just used to really love the sort of hometown feel of South Shore Surf Club, really.
That was cool, for me. Man. Yes, it was. Now I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah, good fun. To be honest, I never felt at that level to be going down to the Billabong. I just wasn't there. South Shore was good. It was fun, and I think more than anything, I would always just prefer to be at the brim. We could get those really, really good April, May, June swells early on a Saturday morning, and 10 people would be a crowd.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure. Yeah.
Why be anywhere else?
And did you get to Durban? Did you get to Durban much, Paul?
Yeah, I studied in Durban for 4 years, so I didn't surf a hell of a lot up there. We sort of just lived for the weekend, and then we would head back to South every weekend. Okay. But we did the odd, the sort of early morning surf. Okay. And it's funny, listening to your last podcast with Greg Swart, and I actually had a memory of him because I think it was the first time I ever surfed. I think it was called Bay of Plenty.
Yeah. Okay. The bay.
And it was a really, really good day. Just really consistent barrels. And I remember him just getting barrel after barrel. And I was watching, and I was sort of leaning over the lip, watching him ride past me in the barrel. And then eventually he paddled up to me and he said, "Bro, every time you do that, you push the white water down on me and you're wrecking my barrels." I'm like, "Oh, mate, sorry." And he went, "Yeah, stop it." And he paddled back out again on. Yeah, that was, but mostly new pier.
Okay.
And I remember watching Sean Thompson out there in those sort of 1991. Okay. Not sure where he was based at that particular time, but I remember he was in Durban for a bit around that time. And even then, I remember seeing him, even though there were so many good surfers in Durban, watching Sean Thompson in those early 90s and totally dominated. It's just amazing. He rode it just like nobody else, in my opinion, you know.
Wow.
Just his style and his power and obviously his local knowledge. But I didn't surf Durban much. Yeah, it was a bit crowded. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. And okay, let's go back down the South Coast now. You obviously went to high school. You must have been there around the same time as Gary Maish, and guys like that core of surfers.
Yeah. Gary was my brother's year, so he finished 86. I finished high school 89. 85 to 89.
Okay.
Did
you ever get to Sandwich? Did you ever have Sandwich good?
No, I never did. I never really ventured north at all. I had a couple good days at Umzumbi. I had one good day at the Spot, which was a really beautiful memory. Surfing the whole morning with dolphins. But I heard about Sandwich. I heard about it from some of the Tweenie locals. I remember Mark Langer would always talk about Sandwich. Surfed a bit at Tweenie.
Okay.
And that was it, really.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, when there's so many waves on the coast, I never really ventured far from Southbroom, you know. It was mostly Southbroom and Trafalgar. We surfed Trafalgar a fair bit. Saints, I would only go to Saints during South Shore surf comps.
Okay.
Lucian a bit, Yvongo. You know, looking back now, there's probably a lot of ways I would love to have tried, but I just didn't.
Yeah.
And Kev Cox was the first guy to get a car within, you know, in our buddies.
Okay.
And he had I think it was a little Bantam bucky, and we used to all pile in the back.
Yes.
But even then, we would only go to Trafalgar. We had a little stint of going down to Glenmore.
Okay.
And Teo Strand.
Oh,
some good waves down there.
I've had some
that was a really good spot.
Yeah.
And we had the odd South Shore. I think we had a couple comps down there when we were competing against. What was the other club down there? There was another surf club down there.
Yes, it's true. Not Wild Boys. No. Wild Banana. No. There was a guy called Taste Stratum used to shape boards down there. If I've got that name right.
Yeah.
Oh, Brew, I forget the...
It was a small club, but we used to go down there every now and then and have a club comp.
Okay.
And that would often happen at Teo Strand.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, because what was the other club? South Swell.
No, okay, on the coast, I'm thinking now, there was South Shore, there was Localism, which was the Oaks north of the river. And yeah, there was South Shore, Localism, and Wild Boys. That they were a little bit further up Toti side. Wild Boys.
Okay.
That was in my time, in the early to mid 90s to late 1990s. My time at South Shore. Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Yes, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I never really ventured down into Transkei much either.
Okay.
That was just wild sharky territory. That there was no go zone really.
Okay. Paul, I want to shift the conversation completely in another direction, just for a moment. It's just come to mind. What music were you Oaks listening to in those days? I mean, there you're talking mid 80s to late 80s, early 90s. What was in your little Walkman? What tapes did you have? What was happening in with the Southbroom crew, music wise? Where were you guys at?
Definitely the early stuff was mostly the Aussie stuff, you know. Once we got our hands on, definitely In Excess. And then there was the Hoodoo Gurus. They were really big for us. Australian Cool, James Rain.
Oh, James Rain.
K.Z.N. Started getting into Hunters and Collectors. Let me think. You know, we used to religiously watch Tubular Swells, the first Performers movie. So we started hearing bands like Talking Heads,
Okay.
Steve Miller Band. There was a band called Noiseworks that I
Okay.
used to really enjoy, which is another Aussie sort of rock band. But yeah, it was mostly those Aussie bands. There wasn't much South African stuff I was into. I mean, a bit of Johnny Clegg back then.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, Hoodoo Gurus, Gangajang, James Rain. James Rain was really big for us. He was the lead singer for Australian Core, and he sort of came out with his first solo album, I think, in '89, and then had a string of solo albums that were really, really good. And one of the things I made sure to do when I got to Aussie was to go and see all these bands. So I got to see Hunters and Collectors and Gangajang and James Rain on the East Coast in '94.
Okay.
But yeah, it was definitely mostly those Aussie bands for some reason.
Okay.
And then some of the music inspired. We would try and get our hands on some of the music from those surf videos, but before the days of Spotify, you couldn't just hunt down whatever you wanted. You had to buy either a record or a tape.
Hey, you speak like that. Surf movies. I remember when Bunyip Dreaming came out, and there was that Aussie outfit called Yotha Yindi. I remember.
Yeah.
I used to dig those oaks, and Concrete
good.
Blonde, and Mary's
Concrete
Danish.
Blonde.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy, man. Jeez.
Mad Wax. I don't know if you ever remember the surf.
That was Ross Clark Jones. And
Yeah.
Oh,
and that was all Gangajang. And I think that's where we first heard Gangajang. And then I think I got it from Ryan Coney, and I think he got his recording from Peter Lawson, who'd come back from Australia. And I think that's how Gangajang got onto the South Coast. So it was just a tape that was recorded and went around. And I think Ryan had asked Peter Lawson to get Gangajang from Australia when he went.
Yes. Ryan Coney must have been the most connected oak on the coast there, bro. Old man the shaper, all the shaping O's rocking up. Yes, like, bro.
Yeah. I think he lives over in Perth now, actually, or Margaret River.
Okay. Yes, I remember. Yeah, because I was at Darren. His half brother, I don't know the connection there, but Darren he was a year ahead of me at school. He was at school with like Matthew Mentz and Simon Summerton and all, and Jared Aaron. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember Darren and his mom's surf shop just below the Spur in Margate in those days. They had their shop.
Right.
There. Yeah. Yes, like, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. That was. When did Ant open his shop? What year was that?
Paul, if memory serves correct, I remember Anthony saying that he opened up. It was then called the Surf Mart, and it was open.
Right.
It was open in March 1987.
Yeah, because I remember Nev. I think Nevin and Dallin used to work in there.
Okay. And it was just before that April flood, the so-called Natal floods. He had opened just before that, and that flood hit, and it was like, hey, how's your granny, bro? Yeah, but yeah, he opened in 87.
Yeah, I remember, because I think, I remember the sponsors for South Shore were always Surf and Style, Surf Mart, and Lily's Bread Bin. They were always the sponsors.
Yes.
So that would have been, late 80s.
Hey, Lily's Bread Bin, I was like everybody on social media the other day, and I checked this oak with this huge big beard, bro. Doing this thing, he's sitting outside with this bunny chair, and he's like an American oak traveling through South Africa. I don't know what his name is, whatever it is, and he's trying to tune his mates and back in the US, like, hey man, when you come to Margate, you got to go to Lily's Bread Bin, you got to have a bunny chow, bro. And it was and this was recently, maybe a month ago, maybe. And
Okay.
I thought to myself, yes, this Lily's has been going for a long time. I think the late Gav Forbes, I think they opened in '84 or something like that. They've been around a long time, bro. Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember going in there. I think there was these big cheese rolls they used to do or something. A bit like a bun, just totally covered in cheese. And I'd grab one and then walk up just to the left of Lily's. There was that little road alley that used to lead up to Checkers.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Pep Stores was up there,
Yeah.
and that fishing shop.
Yeah.
What was that shop called?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've been there.
Yes, as I can see, in my mind, I'm walking up that road right now. I could still see everything there, yeah. Yes, yeah.
Hey, so when did you first appear at Southbroom? Because I'm just trying to remember.
Paul, yes, this brew.
I'm trying to remember when I first saw you there.
Paul, my folks bought a house in Lynn Road, over the road from Aunt Brod's in 1991. And December of 1991 was the first time. In fact, we used to live right on Ramsgate Beach in Linden Terrace, and in those days, I used to ride a boogie board, a wave warrior. I'll never forget it. And I met one of the Manduv boys, Simon Osborne. He was lifeguarding at Ramsgate, and he used to say to me, he was one of those friendly lifeguards that used to see a little kid like me just totally sucking, and he'd say like, "Hey, bro, you need to wear flippers when you go out here." And I'm only in the shore break battling, you know what I mean? And he used to tune me, listen, there's a beach down the way there called Southbroom, and I never forget, Simon used to tune me, or not all the time, but I remember him saying, Southbroom is a wave for the brave. So my first time walking on Southbroom Beach was exactly the same as you. I left my bag. I had a Pro Class Tog bag from that my folks bought from offshore from Dougie Harrelambus. I remember leaving my bag on the beach just like you and paddling out with my boogie board and my duck feet, bro, like a total chop at that time. And so it would have been December 91, and that's when I saw the Manduv boys hovering at the lifeguard tower, and the police were playing, you know, the band of Sting and Gordon Sumner's, and the police were banging out of there. And I looked at that scene, and there was that one shame, the late what's his name, Sean Finnekirk. He was like he was like the heavy D there, bro, like sleeveless shirt, and just like, to me as a little pipsqueak, that was so gnarly, bro. I'll never forget that, bro. And
he was tall as well.
Yeah, he was big,
guy.
and to me he was just mean, bro. And and I saw this whole gig happening, and then that January, I asked Ant if I could have a weekend job at the surf shop. So that started into a pretty much. I worked for him for over a decade plus in his surf store from that time. Yeah. So Paul, I'd heard, and then I met Lee Gilmore and Brad Hardwick and O's like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And then so I carried on surfing Southbroom. Sadly, I became a kneeboarder. Oh my goodness gracious, bro! You like dogs, you get fleas, Paul. So I hung out with Lee Gilmore and I started riding a kneeboard, bro. But anyway, I got rid of that a few years later. I had some good waves on it. Nothing against the kneeboarding, Oaks, but time to move on, you know. And I had heard about this character, Paul Harris, bro. Paul Harris. And then the first time I saw you was at the Broom. It was flipping gigantic. I'm not even sure why you Oaks were even trying to paddle out. And you were right, not on the big rock. You were around the corner like you were saying. And it was you and the late Rory Coates, bro, that day.
Oh, really?
And I remember Yokes hopping, and Rory stuffed up. He got absolutely dulled, bro. That got his ass handed back to him like 100%, and he cut his leg. Shame, man. Like a proper shot.
He did have a bad injury once. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that guy was scary, bro. Rory Coates. He was huge, and he had this mountain.
He was big.
He was a giant, man. You know what I mean? He was a descendant of the giants, bro. And he had this board. I think it was a wedge. It was yellow and all these and the primary colors on it at that time. And he was
Okay.
he was like, you know, I always speak about Leon Hamilton, bro. Well, he was Southbroom's Leon Hamilton in my eyes, bro.
He had a similar build, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my memory of you and Rory. And I think the next time I saw you was probably you might have been on holiday from England. It would have been mid-1990s. It was a crap day at Southbroom onshore, and you were just down there. I think you were ASAP just hanging out for a while, and that's when I said, "Hey, how's it, Paul?" And that was probably the first and only time I ever really spoke to you was then. So you know what it's like, Paul. It's like I'm 45 now. You're a couple ahead of me, and it's like you're walking up to this oak that you've heard stories about. You know what I'm saying? It kind of reminds me of the first and only time I ever surfed pipeline. I walked down the beach with my longboard and I paddled out. And when I had a few waves, it wasn't very big, and I managed. And when I came in, Joel Tudor was sitting on the wall just there, and I remember.
Oh, really?
I remember that whole feeling. It was exactly like when I met you at Southbroom type of thing. It was like, yes, that's Paul Harris, bro. That's Paul Harris. Crazy, eh? When you're allowed to, it's just silly, eh? But anyway, that's how it was for me, eh? Yeah.
I remember when I'd been away for a few years and I came back. I'd only been away a couple of years, and you know the next generation is there so quickly. It just fills the gap, I think. Yeah. And I walked down for a surf, and there was this little dude. He must have been about 12 years old, tiny little dude. I don't know who he was. That would have been about 96. And I walked down the beach, and he was walking off the rocks as well. And I sort of just acted like I knew, like I'd never been there before. And I said to him, "Hey, what's this wave like?" And he was like, "Oh, bro, it's so good. I've been surfing here a few years. Let me show you how to jump off the rocks." And I went, yeah, show me. And he led me off the rocks, and he showed me the rock to jump off. And he was so proud of his home spot, you know. And it was so cool to be the outsider, you know, for a day, and just be led by this little dude who was showing me around. I don't know who he was.
Oh, awesome. Yes, like, bro. Yeah, and he probably tuned all his braachjies. Hey, this kook was there, bro, and I helped him out, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I've really only surfed Southbroom a few times since then. I was last back there about 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
And arrived. I remember it was a Sunday. Good time of year. I think it was. I just come up the coast from J Bay, and honestly, there was no one there. And it was a Sunday. There was one guy out, and had such a lovely session. And I was just thinking, where is everybody? You know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the local scene is like there now, but it was empty, man, and it was such good waves.
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, this is the place I remember.
Yeah.
But it was strangely empty, especially for a Sunday.
Wow.
Beach was empty.
Maybe there was maybe there was an international rugby game on the Saturday. Probably that's what probably happened. You know what I mean?
No, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Paul. What I want to go in another complete direction now, and probably we'll close it off with this. Paul, so nowadays you've immigrated. You're based in New Zealand, and you are a craftsman. Do you want to talk to me for a couple of minutes about your trade and what you're doing now, and what you build and how people can get a hold of your product? I want to spend a couple of minutes on that. Would you mind?
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I studied jewelry design, and over the years, that's mostly what I've done. Arrived in New Zealand and got back into my jewelry. And that's over the last 5 or 6 years, that's morphed into sculpture. About 5 or 6 years, I started working in timber. And as far as my craft, I'd say that's mostly what I do now, as far as my art and my craft. And I've sort of dabbled in various sizes and shapes, and I realized there's just so much to learn about timber. So I really enjoyed the change of scale from jewelry. And when I changed about 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, That's it. I'm more than happy to mostly leave jewelry.
Okay.
And I work from home. I rent a property that's got heaps of space, big double garage, big half-round barn, and where I live, there's no shortage of timber, whether it's storm-fallen trees and as I put the word out, I find I do get a lot of timber to work with.
Okay.
I've got a little local gallery that I have in the summer called the Art Station.
Okay.
Had that this was my 5th year now.
And can you find that on Instagram?
So over the summer. Sorry?
Is that on Instagram? If people wanted to look it up, is it on Instagram or Facebook? Where do you post stuff?
Yeah. Most of my work is Paul Harris Art Design on Instagram.
Okay.
And I pretty much post everything there. Anything that happens in my creative world ends up on Paul Harris Art Design, and people get they can get in touch with me through there.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Okay.
I'm normally stopping myself from being distracted with new techniques and new things because I just want to have a go at everything. I've recently had a little go at ceramics.
Wow.
But been telling myself for a long time just to leave that, just don't get distracted, just kind of stick to one thing, which I haven't done. I've recently just bought a potter's wheel, so I'm going to be having a go at that.
Okay.
But just making things, Karl. I know that I'll always be a maker. I've always loved pattern, shape, and colour. And sometimes only in hindsight you can see how far back that kind of stuff goes. I remember I was the kind of kid who would sit on the school bus from Ramsgate to Port Shepstone, and I'd be the one looking at the patterns on the fences or the shadows that the palm trees would, kind of display along the lawns. And that's how I was. I just lived in a world of pattern and colour, and that's what comes out in my work. That's what sort of brings me the most satisfaction in that sort of area. And I know I'll always do that, I don't really relate to the term retirement. I think I'll be making till the day I die.
Yeah, your retirement, what's that, bro? I used to look at the Oaks that were like 50. I remember going to my old man's 50th birthday. I screamed, hey, the Oak's old, bro. He's old, except. Hey, now for me, 50 is, it's like, hey, I'm in 4 years' time, I'm there. You know what I mean? I'm 46 this March. Hey, 50 is like right there. I'm screaming, I'm still a light here, except. You know what I mean?
I've just turned 53. Yeah, I just feel like I'm sort of starting. I'm just warming up, man.
Jeez, like that, bro. You're crazy. Yes.
Just keep healthy and fit. That's the main thing. And, that's my focus.
No, cool. Listen, one more quick last question that's just come to mind. So you spoke about the boards you're riding. I just want to go back to boards and equipment. So what are you currently riding, Paul? What shape, what fin setup? And what are you riding, bro?
Yeah, I've got, my main board is a Channel Islands 6 foot, what's it called? Fred Stubble. That's the model. That's my go-to board. I think it's 32 litres. And then I've got a 10'2" Donald Takayama nose rider, which I've had for many years.
Wow.
And that's great. That's just a big tank, and you can ride anything above ankle height.
Sure.
I've got a stand-up paddleboard for rivers and kind of out to sea stuff. And I've still got those are the main 3 boards that I use. I'm actually thinking it'd be nice to get something midway.
Okay.
Like a sort of an 8-footer or something, because it's often small around here.
Okay.
And when you don't surf as much, you end up flapping around on a 6.0, and it's not that fun anymore. But my last session was on the 10-2, and that's just fun, you know.
Yeah. Hey, bro, I love the longboards. Man, the longboard
Really,
seemed to me, hey, that got me, man. Jeez, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, really, yeah. No, it's good fun, and I think these days things are so eclectic with people's quivers. You know, thinking back to the 80s and 90s, really there was one shape of surfboard mostly. You know, there was none of this.
Yeah.
Having a quiver with a fish and a mid-length and a longboard, and that was unheard of.
Hey, Paul, you know what I'm going to... Sorry to interject here. The next board I order, whenever that may be, I tell you what I want. I want to put glass fins. That's what I want.
Please remember that.
I don't want futures. I don't want the FCS. I'll probably get Gary Maish to make me one. I'll tune him, Gazzo.
Nice.
Please. Put the roving, glass it like the old days, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that second board of mine, that the Town and Country. I remember I would always marvel at the fins. You know, the twin fins were always nice, big, chunky fins.
Yeah.
And they had the main color, and then around the edge there was like a red stripe, and then a yellow stripe, and then a green, and I think parts of the fin you could actually see through.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a total work of art.
Yes.
Which you just don't get. Yeah, you don't get that.
Hey, you know, the last time I was many years ago, probably 6 years now, since I was on the South Coast, I went up to Gary Maish's farm, him and Justin, and at the time Lynn Maish was still alive, shame, or the late Lynn. And man, I love going through that factory. You know, you clunk that resin brass market, bro, and you walking around with K.Z.N, and he's showing you the projects that are going on, and you know, he's still got his guys there, super talented blokes, man. Some of those Zulu guys, and there they are crafting those fins out, bro, precision,
really?
Bro, and it's just like, wow, and I think to myself. You know what really winds me up, Paul, is you get a guy like Gary and his outfit still making fins handmade, bro. And then they get outpriced by look, business is business, I get it, I understand it. But he gets outpriced and outdone by fins coming in from other places, probably like China or wherever they get made these days, who knows. And I just think, hey, bro, there's an oak on the coast whose knowledge and craftsmanship. Yeah. And it just boils down to, it's just the product's a little bit more expensive, and then you suck a dog ball at the surf shop and you don't make the sale. And I just think to myself, geez, like, bro, come on, guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's been making for so many years, eh? I remember it, I got a, what was the board that he used to make? Wave Weapon. He used to make Wave Weapon surfboards. In the 80s, and I remember he made me a custom board, and he brought it to school in one of those little socks.
Oh yeah.
I must have been about standard 7 or something. Yeah, no, standard 6, standard 7, because Gary had left school by then. He left in 86. He was a mate of my brother's. But yeah, he's been shaping
since then,
probably since he was about, I don't know, 12 or 13. I don't know when he started, but he's been making forever.
Yeah. Hey, the Maish boys.
Yeah.
You know, a trip to the coast is not a trip to the coast if you haven't been up to the farm.
I've never been there, actually.
Really? My goodness.
No.
Yeah, that's very.
That was
cool,
way too far north.
In fact, when I was at Sheppey High, the oaks that I hung around with were mainly tweenie boys. And Sandwich guys, so and they, you know, that reputation was still lingering around then, and they were a rough bunch of oaks. Nowadays,
that was a gang.
Yes, it's brew, and
that was a major bender there.
Aish, brew, and they used to tune me on a Wednesday night. Or Peter, Gary's bully, used to have like a pool night, and he had built this pool room, brew, and he had a proper, I think it's called a billiard table. I might be wrong. I'm not really a pool player.
Yeah.
And they used to have shindigs there, bro. Hey, must put the court like this and pull a pipe, have a court. And I was too scared to go there. And I can't remember the first time I went to Gazzo's farm, but over the years, getting to know Gary through the shaping, and he really helped me out a lot when I started to shape for a bit in the early 2000s. I mean,
Okay.
Gary, very graceful. He never held back on info. If I was stuck at Chungaza, like, how does this work? And he would explain it to me, bro. You know what I mean? He didn't go like, you know what, you got to learn that by yourself, bro. He was really outgoing, and he was a good guy, and he still is. And he's, I used to buy, because I didn't buy barrels of resin. I bought 25 kilo at a time type of thing. So I used to get my resin from Gazo. So that's why I used to go up. And
right.
Yeah,
okay.
super family, man. Good guys, really. Yeah.
He lived at Southbroom for a while, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, him and Debbie. Yeah. Funny that I forgot about that actually. Yeah, they lived there for quite some time. Yeah.
I remember a few years when I came back and I heard that he was living at Southbroom.
Yeah.
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 And I know that he'd got into kite surfing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, he was another guy who I remember seeing him at Southbroom. And for years, our takeoff spot was just where it was. And then I remember seeing Gary, and he was going, guys, why don't you go and sit down there? And he would sit another 5 meters around the point. Just past, there was a big boil-up rock. And we just never ventured there, But that's where he used to sit. And it was like, oh, okay, this is doable. You can actually take off around there,
Yes,
and it just needed that talent to show us,
My bro, that guy can surf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole family.
Yes, yeah. No, okay. Listen, Paul, I'm going to love and leave you, bro. It's been absolutely fantastic connecting with you and just talking about the 80s at the Broom. And I'm sure
Carl,
who's ever listening to this podcast that knows and has surfed Southbroom can relate to the stories. And perhaps, maybe they've met some of the characters that you've brought up. And, small world, eh? Yeah, just...
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Thanks, man. It's always good to... it's something I haven't spoken about in a long time. It's just like a trip down memory lane talking about that stuff, because as you talk, it's like you're there again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, wicked, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I see. Sweet Paul, you know what we should do? I said the same thing to Greg Swart when we were chatting a couple of nights ago. It's just like, hey, there's got to be like a part 2 or another episode to come, because I think we've just really, if I think about it, just scratched the surface of our home break, and yeah. Anyway.
Just a deeper dive into all of that stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we'll take a section of it and just maybe dissect it a bit more and just have a bit of fun with it. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Lekker, Paul.
We haven't even spoken about Louis' spot around the corner.
Oh, no, that's an episode on its own. Yes, I've got some good stories from there. Yeah.
That was one place that I think I only surfed twice.
Okay.
I now wonder how many times that place was going off and we just didn't even bother looking over the hill.
My brew. Yes, I've had some good waves there. My goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Bit scary though. A bit far out to sea.
Yeah, no, I tell you, the reason why I did the paddle out there was because of two people, Louis Wilmrans and John Sharrock. The Sharrock family used to come down, I wouldn't say every weekend. They'd come down Easter holidays, July holidays, and they would invest time there. They would rent a cottage and spend like the whole holiday there, bro. And I became good family friends. And John, he was a safari boy, and him and his brother Rob, shame Rob passed away a few years ago. They used to charge, bro. And it was like, okay, John's paddling out. I suppose I better just do it. Otherwise, I'll never hear the end of it, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I had some good
excellent.
sessions.
Yeah, that's definitely round two.
No, one time. Lekker, Paul. Listen, it's night time here by me. It's daytime there by you. You have a fantastic day, and we'll catch up soon. Sweet.
Cheers, Carl.
Lekker,
see you soon.
bro. Sweet. Ciao.
if I ever surf Southbroom again, if I ever see you there, be 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I fetch my 10-0 from the one and only K.Z.N. Love is fun, authentic charm, and we could surf all day if the water's clean. We could dive for a craze. I love those winter days. High tide, low tide, take a stroll through Riptide. High tide, low tide, take a stroll through Riptide. If I ever surfed Southbroom again, if I ever saw you there, memories, they flood my mind, the characters and the good old times. Southbroom side, and we could sit up on the wall, talk stories all day long, all day long. The legend of Ralph Rovig, board washed in and they search for him. The Mandoos boys, Paul Harris could embarrass the pack with his front side attack. Steve Ralph, he delved into the history for me. The crayfish in, the spray painting, Dave Mitchell and the boys kissed by the stars all begin. Jig, jig, and shake a leg. Jig, jig, shake a leg. Jig, jig, shake a leg. Jig, jig, shake a leg. Spray tin in his hand. Jig, jig, shake a leg. 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 The evening sun was set in the west. Michelle, do you still dance to In Excess? Car park session. Dawn patrol, 6 a.m. There he is, rolling in, blue eyes and full of life. He'll tip our heads in biasens. I think you know just who he is. Been surfing there 40 odd years, 40 odd years. If I ever surf Southbroom again, if I ever saw you there, if I ever surfed Southbroom again, if I ever saw you there, jig, jig will shake a leg, jig, jig will shake her leg. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Myrtle, I'm recording, girlie. Oh, man. Daddy was just getting so into it. Oh, okay, my little pumpkin. If I ever surf Southbroom again, must I put that on your head? Is it oorlat? Okay, okay, just give me one moment, girlie. Right, here we go.